Hey everyone, thanks for watching. I got a really exciting video for you today, and it's actually one of those ones that I get to ask a lot of questions and selfishly learn alongside you. So I have my friend Josh Belk with me this morning. How you doing today, Josh?
Oh, I'm wonderful, Mike. Good to see you.
Hey man. So what Josh and I are going to talk about is opportunity zones, and more specifically, what is an opportunity zone? Why is it sort of new, interesting, and different? And then, what was the goal behind it, and how can we all take advantage of it? So I thought we'd go right to the source, the man that I've seen talk about it, and ask him all kinds of questions. So you ready, Josh?
Sure thing. If I don't know the answer, I'll make one up.
I love that. All right.
Hopefully we do a little better than that. All right.
Yeah. No, I think you're going to be fine. You're sandbagging it. So I thought we would start this interview by just sort of defining what you think why was the opportunity zone created? Why now? And what do you think the overall goal was for the government in establishing it this year?
Sure thing. As far as the opportunity zones, and there are some facts related to this. There are about 8,700 opportunity zones throughout the United States, and so and there are certain qualifiers that these particular areas have to meet. But basically, I think the intent, and whether it's just from the president down or who ultimately whoever was the brain trust behind this, was to get capital investment, economic development going on in some communities that were economically depressed. And so I sit here in Northwest Indiana, and not too far from my office is a city, Gary, Indiana, which used to be a booming area, a huge shopping district, and in just a half a century ago. Now when you go there, it's very much an economically depressed area. It needs a lot of help. And so there are parts of Gary that our governor here has declared as opportunity zones. So areas that have a lot of houses that need repair, commercial properties that need repair, and they're just sitting vacant, or they're in a very poor state. So the idea behind it from the federal government end, at least, and of course there's some trickle down on this as well, but I think the primary objective was for basically investors. To get into these areas, to dump some money into this area, and then give them a reason to do so. And of course, that's the tax benefit side.
So again, it's if I were to sort of summarize that from my perspective, so the powers that be, whoever they are, has said, we have parts of this country that need some attention. We need to get away from the coasts, if you will, where all the focus is. And the best way to do that often is to change or incent via taxes. Right, because we're going after people who own assets, who have the wherewithal to make investments, and that was kind of the focus. You think?
I believe so, and of course, a lot of this whole the law in general was was spearheaded, and a lot of it was from the president, of course, who had the business mindset. And whether or not you do or don't agree with him politically, I think all of us have areas we may agree and may disagree. But I think if you kind of look from his mindset and a lot of his mind went into this, was he's a guy that knows real estate. That's where he's made his money. And so he kind of understands that that there are people out there who give them the incentive, will go in. And it's beyond just the tax incentive. It's also, you have a lot of people and the people that we mutually know as well who have a heart to get into these communities and really want to try to help, not necessarily get a handout or even to necessarily financially benefit them, but they want to really try to make a positive impact in these communities. Yeah. And so so there's a lot of that goes behind that goes into this as well.
Yeah. So why do we lay out the timeline now? So if the goal was to incent investment in economically depressed areas, so first off, nothing wrong with that. That's awesome. Why don't we kind of lay out the timelines? Because there's obviously some rules to get in, and there's obviously rules to get out. So why don't we start with kind of the outline to begin with? How does somebody sort of qualify to get their investments into an opportunity zone fund?
Sure thing. And so from a regulation end, there aren't many.
Okay.
So basically, there's just a form that goes in with a tax filing that says, "Hey, we're investing in opportunity zones." Okay, so it's basically a single-page document at this point. So the whole regulation oversight is very minimal. And then anybody can do it. So the money can come from anywhere. So anything that's short or long-term capital gains, and if it can be stocks, it can be bonds, it can be precious metal, whatever the case may be. So or it can be if you're in real estate already, so it can be anything that would normally traditionally qualify as short-term or long-term capital gains. Now, this is different than a 1031. A 1031, it has to be a like kind. So it has to be residential to residential, et cetera. So this does not fall under the same 1031 rules, although some of the same philosophies behind it are there. So basically, if you have money now that's reaping some sort of capital gains, you can take that and then invest it into an asset, into real property in an opportunity zone. And anybody can do it. It can be an individual. I can do it individually. Somebody can set up an LLC or a corporation to do this. Somebody can get a group of people together and kind of set up a fund that invest as well. The only rule there is that if you're setting up an entity, regardless of whether it's a fund or if it's a for-profit standalone entity, is that entity has to have 90% of its assets invested into the opportunity zones. So you can't be just saying, okay, I have this property in an opportunity zone in my entity, and all the rest of these I'm investing elsewhere. So if somebody wants to do this and see the asset protection side, they'll want to set up a standalone entity. That's all it does is invest into the property or properties in an opportunity zone. As far as the timeline, so say for example, I have an active stock trading account, okay, and I want to sell some of those stocks, take some of that money. So say I have $500,000 sitting in a stock fund. I don't like this ride on the market, so I'm going to take some of this active money that I have going on. I want to take $500,000. I want to go invest in a piece of commercial property, for example, in an opportunity zone. First of all, once you sell what you have currently, so once I were to take that my stock fund and sell it, I have 180 days to purchase the property in the opportunity zone. Okay, so I have a 6-month timeline. That's number one. Number two, there are some from a capital gains end, there's some definite timelines that have to be hit in order to get the maximum tax benefit. Okay, so the first one is is 7 years. Okay, so there's a 5-year and then a 7-year timeline. So once you go and you identify this property, if you hold it for 5 years, you basically so say for example, I have this $500,000. I bought stock for $400,000. I sold it for $500,000. I have that $100,000. Make numbers easy on us, okay?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
$100,000 in capital gains tax. Normally, if I were to take that money and I were to go and just spend it where else, I just pay my capital gains tax on $100,000. Okay, but if I decide to go and buy a commercial property, residential property, whatever the case may be, in an opportunity zone, then that $100,000 now does not become taxed immediately. So 5 years from now, normally instead of me paying tax on so say for example, I buy that property and I hold it for 5 years. If I don't hold it for 5 years, I pay capital gains tax as I always have.
Okay.
There's no benefit unless I hold the property for at least 5 years.
Okay.
But if I hold the property for at least 5 years, I basically reduce my capital gains tax exposure by 10%. Okay, so instead of paying tax on the $100,000, I would pay capital gains tax on the $90,000 plus whatever sort of appreciation that I've had while I've held the money in the fund.
Okay.
Now, if I hold it for 7 years, okay, then it's 15%. So essentially, I would pay tax on $85,000 instead of $100,000 if I were to hold it for 7 years. Now, this particular law basically expires in 2026. So what that means is, in order for me to take the maximum amount of benefit as it relates to capital gains, I have to have that property purchased by the end of 2019. Otherwise, I'm going to hit that 2026 date, and I'm not going to be able to take full advantage of it. So what happens so say when I buy a property this year,
okay,
and I were to hold, so I take this $500,000, $100,000 of it is capital gains, and I were to go and buy this, I'm just going to make it simple, a commercial property, I identify it, and I pay $500,000 for it.
Yep.
Hold it from now until 2026.
Okay.
And I'm going to hold it past this for this example, but what happens in 2026 is I'm going to have to pay capital gains on that $85,000.
Okay.
On the appreciation, because I haven't sold the property yet.
Right.
But I'm going to pay tax on the 85% of that $100,000, so basically $85,000.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to pay tax on basically it's going to be my 2026 tax return in 2027.
Okay.
Now, after that point, if I continue to hold the property for 10 years, I get all the appreciation. So that $500,000, say I buy the commercial property for $500,000. In 2026, now that property is worth $750,000, and so again now I get to 2029, 2030. Yep. This property is $500,000, $750,000, $1 million. That appreciation
Uh-huh.
I don't pay any capital gain tax on once I sell it.
Uh-huh.
My only tax exposure is on the $85,000
Right.
that I paid. Now I have it in the property, so I'm gonna have to find the cash somewhere to pay the taxes.
Sure.
So you need to keep that in mind. But once 2026 comes, you pay the tax on the 85% of your capital gains that you had earned previously in 2019.
Yep.
And if you continue to hold the property after that point, and then you decide to sell it in 2030, for example, all that appreciation is tax-free money.
All right, let me lay it out because I think you did a great job, but I want to make sure, I know it, and then I kind of summarize it in steps. So I think your example is great. I have a stock trading account with 500. I invested 400 to buy these stocks. I have $100,000 in profit. I sell those today, go to Charles Schwab, whoever it is, hit sell. I have now $500,000. I then take that $500,000 and buy a commercial office building in an opportunity zone for $500,000. So there's no debt, none of that stuff. So far, so good?
Right. That's correct.
Now, so it's now January. So when I get to file my 2019 taxes, I will not report any capital gains on that $100,000 because I'm going to fill out this one form that says I invested the $100,000 profit in an opportunity zone, and here's the address or whatever. So far,
right. There's some logistics that'll go on in the filing, but in a nutshell.
In theory. Yeah. So that saves me, immediately. Let's assume it was long term. So that saves me some taxes. Then we go through this, and it expires in 2026. So when I file my 2026 taxes, I will then pay capital gains tax on a reduced number. So it won't be the full 100; it'll be 85,000. So I will owe some taxes then.
That is correct.
Okay. Then it fast forwards to 2030, and let's just say it's worth $1 million for easy math. I then sell it. There's a profit in the building that went from 500 purchase to $1 million sale. So I have $500,000 in what would normally be capital gains. I owe no taxes on that.
That is correct.
The only thing that would be left, just because we both own real estate, no real estate, there's probably some taxes owed on depreciation recapture, I would guess.
Yeah, and that's the thing. That's kind of one of the beauties of it. There is no depreciation capture like you normally would have maybe in a 1031 or something to that effect. So there is no recapture. So now, if you hold this as a rental, for example.
Yep.
Okay, so you have this commercial building and you're leasing it.
Yes.
So or if it's rental property, single family homes, whatever it is,
yep.
You're going to have your normal rents and your depreciation, all this other kind of stuff you're taking on an ongoing basis.
Yes.
So that's kind of your operating side, and that would continue on as normal.
Right.
You would have so you're running this thing, leasing it for $1,500 a month, and you have cost of appreciation, this type of stuff in the property. So you would normally report that as you always customarily normally have. It's just a capital gains component of it. Whenever you sell it down the road is where you receive the benefit. Okay.
That makes total sense. So I love this kind of introduction to this because I will share with you, there's a lot of, I don't know if you want to call it information or misinformation about opportunity zones. I've heard both sort of voices talk about, hey, you can only sell real estate, i.e. they're saying it's very close to a 1031 and the like kind idea. And then I hear folks talk about, yeah, you can really take anything that has capital gains, i.e. stocks, i.e. gold, i.e. whatever. So, how certain, I guess I'll just ask, because I know you are certain, but I just want it recorded. How certain are we that we could do this stock trading example where we bought?
Yeah, and it's clearly written. If you go to the October 2018, there was a release on this by the IRS, and it's very straightforward.
Yeah.
So there's no with this entire Tax Cut and Jobs Act, which is opportunity zones as part of it.
Yep.
Put out there, and it was like Obamacare in some ways. Put out there and passed, and okay, now what?
Now what? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So one thing that they did here was they gave the IRS a lot of directive as far as how are we going to interpret this.
Yep.
And so over this past year, because I first started doing interviews when the thing first came out in the end of 2017, we're like, the answer a lot of times was we don't know what this is going to look like.
Yeah, we don't know. It's this big. Yeah. We don't know what it is.
Yeah. So, but they did come out with a lot of directives here this last fall, and did provide some clarification on not just this, but a lot of the areas. So now there's still a lot of areas that are, still some gray areas, and so we're going to figure some things out and just in practical applications we go forward and see how the IRS enforces some of these things. Yeah. But in regard to on point to your question, as far as the degree of certainty is, it's 100%.
Very cool. And can you just give you said October 2018 directive. Does it have a name, or where would they find it? Or
I'd have to look that up, but yeah,
okay.
there is. But there's a publication out there. So if you just did a basic Google search, it'll pop up for you.
Got it. Very cool. All right. So
the IRS has been very transparent in as far as the clarification publication throughout this process.
Awesome. Very cool. All right. Then the other thing that when I sort of peeled this back, just as an individual, the word that threw me for a loop, and I just want to throw it out there because I think it may catch other individual investors, is the notion of a fund, right? When I saw fund, I was like, oh, this is only for the big boys, right? All the big boys are going to set up the little boys club and, get, millions of dollars together. And they're basically, they can afford the regulation that I intuitively thought fund meant. After speaking with you, a fund isn't what I was thinking of. So why don't we just tackle that beast of a definition, if you don't mind?
Right, because when you get into raising capital, if you talk about real estate investors, I know you'll have quite a few of them that listen to this particular medium that you provide. Is in their mind they're used to, okay, this fund, I'm raising capital, now all of a sudden I have all these regulations I have to fall under. In this case here, if you're raising a ton of capital, that type of thing, you may still have that issue, but for the most part, if it's you and a group that want to get together and invest in opportunity zones, they all come in as members into the LLC, whatever the case may be. That is what a lot of these quote unquote funds, that's what they're doing. They're just pooling together money, but each of them have a stake, because there is no benefit to somebody to come into investing as a lender or anything else into to one of these particular quote unquote entities or funds, because they receive no tax benefit. The only tax benefit comes to the stakeholders within this entity. So when they're talking about funds, they're all these, so they're basically taking long-term capital gains or short-term capital gains, which basically capital gains money, and they're now purchasing or buying a stake, a stakeholder position, whether it's a membership interest or shareholder position within an entity.
Right. So I guess sort of two questions there. First off, just go back to the capital gains tax. So can I use net new money? Like if I had I don't know, a couple $100,000 in a savings account that wasn't in an asset, wasn't appreciating, can I just go buy in an opportunity zone and then get these benefits on the appreciation, or does it have to be an exchange or a sale or whatever?
It has to be capital gains money. That's where the 90% rule comes in, where it's helpful. Right. So if you end up in a situation to where, in our example, you have 500,000, but you need 700,000, you have 200,000. In that case here, you're going to run into the 90% issue. So that's going to take some work. And so at that point, you need to partner with somebody who can provide the other 200,000 that has capital gains money that they can invest with you, or you need to make sure that that you hit that 90% threshold. And so there's a little bit of strategy involved, a little bit of work that you're going to have to do before you get into this.
Very cool. Okay. And then let's talk about fund from a little guy, right? And you can just use me as an example, right? When I saw fund, I was like, oh my God, I got, I'm getting bombarded with people sending me marketing about join my fund, right? Because I invest in Fresno, which has a large swath of opportunity zones.
Mm-hmm.
But after talking with you and getting some coaching is as long as I create an entity and just has, my investments in opportunity fund, I don't need to join a true fund like a 401k or a Fidelity thing. I can do it on my own. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And for a lot of these people, they're trying to, they're really trying to buy into, a huge area, trying to get this big thing. But no, for a lot of people, for your ordinary investors like yourself, and it's you and you decide to partner with somebody else who has, and maybe they're wanting to sell a property that they currently have, and they want to, tax shelter that particular piece of property. You identify something, you guys partner in together, set up an LLC. Maybe there's 4 of you, whatever the case may be. Or you're in a room, for example, like the one that we were in here a couple months ago, and they want to invest in an area, so people begin to pool their money, quote unquote, pool their money,
right?
And so each of them become a stakeholder in this entity related there. Kind of go through that normal process as you would setting up an entity, and then go and buy in opportunity zones.
Very, very cool. And that was exciting that for when again, speaking with you, before we record the video, it was so exciting to learn that unlike some things I see pushed down from on high, this is something that the little guy can participate in as long as they do their homework and are willing to make the investments. It's not limited just to the rich, if you will. So I was very excited to see that. So do you think, why 2026? I mean, why did they put an end to this? Is that because they just want to force investments inside 2018 and 19 for some reason, or any thoughts on why the timeline?
Yeah, no. There's a lot of theory out there on the timeline as far as, and most of those theories all come from a budgetary end. So these people in the your public finance office, and at the federal level, they kind of defend as far as with our budgets and how these things all play out, and so most of at least the theory out there is that that's what played into it. Why that 2026 timeline was purely for budgetary purposes at the federal end.
And then who has the control to declare opportunity zone? Is it the governors, or is it the governors?
It is the governor. So the governor of each state was given the latitude to declare the opportunity zones, and based on certain parameters.
Sure.
And I think the number I had read yesterday, I was doing some reading on this. I think it's like 57% of communities in the United States has at least some area of it that could qualify as an opportunity zone.
Yeah.
So standard isn't all that high.
Yeah. Okay. And then as far as what kind of assets can be purchased, is it only, so it's real estate, obviously, which means to me, houses, apartments, commercial buildings. I'm assuming malls, I'm assuming gas stations, I'm assuming anything that has an APN or an ID that declares it land.
Yeah. I mean, so anything, right. So anything within that opportunity zone, that's real property.
Yeah. Real property. Okay. So again, it could be a manufacturing plant. It could be anything.
Sure.
Okay. All right. I think you've done anything we've missed on this opportunity zone that kind of you've been asked lots of questions on, I'm sure, that you want to maybe just put out there and highlight.
Yeah. And I don't think, and some people, think this is like really, really complicated. But it really isn't. It's kind of one of those things that it's relatively simple. The hard work is going through the process of, the money, the tax strategy, making sure that it's done correctly. But as far as the rules themselves, you can go, and if you're interested in this, you can just simply do a Google search with your state. I'm in Indiana, so I can do Indiana opportunity zones. Our governor here has put it right on his page. You can click on it, and most states have this. You have a map, and you can zoom in, so you can, there's properties for sale in this area, and you do your normal research, and they made it fairly simple as far as on that end as well.
One of the things I want to make sure we do for you here is turn it over to you and let you advertise yourself and your firm. Real estate investing. One of your greatest partners is having an accountant and their team that can support you, whether it's opportunity zone or yearly filings or tax structures. You're one of the best. So I want to make sure you get a chance to advertise yourself and how people can reach you and your firm. Because I imagine this video is going to get a lot of topics and get a lot of opportunity for you to grow your customers.
Well, my name is Josh Belk. I own Belk & Associates accounting firm just outside of Chicago in a little town called St. John, Indiana. And been doing this since '98, and a great majority of our clients are in the real estate space. And as you said, Michael, I mean, it is imperative you have a good attorney, you have a good accountant on your team that's working for you, that's invested in your business, that cares about you. Insurance, all these areas that are so important in business, and it's something as far as that we try to do and try to add that value as far as to our clients. And so if you're looking to go in this direction, you have an accountant, definitely you want to get them engaged as you would in anything that you're doing. To make sure that it's set up correctly and that you don't run into issues on the back end. So from anything I said today, definitely take it to your accountant, have that conversation with them, make sure that whatever you do fits exactly what it is that you're doing, meet your goals as well.
Excellent. Do you want to sort of give a way to reach out to you, or this search Josh Belk & Associates, or do you want to give your phone number or office line or anything?
Yeah, Belk & Associates is the firm. My office number, 219-365-9520. You can find me, Facebook, LinkedIn, whatever. I'm there. Send me a message, whatever the case may be, I'll get back to you.
Yeah, and team, if watching this, Josh is one of those special people that really speak the language. I had a chance to meet him a couple of times, shared lunch with my wife and his wife, and he cares, right? It's just not all about the business and all of this. He's asking questions. He's trying to figure out your future. I was really impressed, right? Some of the accountants we worked with over the years, it's all about the numbers and the tax filing and the sheets and all of that. But Josh really cares and tried to understand what the future was for us, because the future could be different for lots of people. So if you're looking for an accountant, I would strongly recommend Josh and his team. I don't think you'll be disappointed. So hopefully that helps.
Thank you. That was gracious. Appreciate it.
You caught it. Well, I want to thank you for doing this. Opportunity Zone, this video, as expected, I've learned a ton. I need to go figure out, because I think Fresno is like 70% Opportunity Zone.
Oh, wow.
I need to figure out which areas I want to play in, because I'm buying all the time. I have a bunch of assets I bought during the crash that maybe I could look to sell and play with my capital gains money. So this is an interesting year for me. So I want to thank you for your time.
Oh, my pleasure. Anytime.
All right, buddy. Thank you very much.